Are you struggling to get a token from your Spring Boot application? You're not alone. Today, we're diving into the tricky world of CORS and Spring Security OAuth2. And I promise you, by the end of this video, you'll have the answers you need. I totally get it. It can be incredibly frustrating when you can authenticate just fine using Postman or the terminal, but your JavaScript single-page application hits a wall due to CORS issues. You're definitely not the only one facing this challenge. Let's break down the specific issue at hand. One user recently asked, "Why can't I get a token from OAuth/token in my browser?" They explained that when CORS is disabled, everything works perfectly, but enabling it leads to an insufficient authentication exception. Sound familiar? Let's explore this together. So what's going on here? When CORS is disabled, your requests can go through without any checks, but enabling CORS introduces a layer of security that requires proper authentication. This is where things can get tricky, especially with Spring Security. And stick around. I have a crucial tip at the end that will help you configure your Spring Security settings correctly so you can authenticate without any hiccups. To address the CORS issue with Spring Security, the user should first enable CORS in their Spring Boot application. This can be done by adding a configuration class. Next, the user should ensure that the OAuth2 client is properly configured in their application. This involves specifying the client ID and secret in the application properties. After configuring CORS and the OAuth2 client, the user should implement a security filter to handle the authentication process. This filter will extract the credentials from the request. Finally, the user should test the setup by making a request from their JavaScript SPA. They can use the Fetch API or Axios to send a request to the OAuth token endpoint. Fun fact, CORS stands for Cross-Origin Resource Sharing, and it's like a bouncer at a club, only letting in requests that have the right credentials. So, make sure your requests are dressed appropriately. Now let's look at the answers provided by other users. An alternative solution provided by a user suggests configuring CORS in Spring Boot 2 using a generic filter registration bean. They recommend creating a CORS config class where you define a custom CORS filter. This filter allows credentials and specifies allowed methods and headers. You also need to add the origins for your local and production environments. Here's the tip I promised. Always test your CORS settings with tools like Postman first. This way, you can ensure that your backend is configured correctly before diving into your JavaScript application. And there you have it. With the right CORS configuration and authentication filter in place, you should be able to get your tokens without any issues. If you found this video helpful, please subscribe for more troubleshooting tips, and remember, every problem has a solution.